We have a very special guest now, and I'm very pleased to be able to introduce Governor Gavin Newsom of California. Gavin Newsom became the 40th governor of California this past January after serving 8 years as lieutenant governor under Jerry Brown. Prior to that, he had held several elected positions in the county and city of San Francisco, culminating in a very successful 7 years as mayor. As mayor, Newsom earned much attention and admiration when he defied both the polls and his own party to declare same-sex marriage legal in the city, a position that has now, of course, been vindicated by the Supreme Court of the United States. I think that a recent comment by Gary South, former Newsom campaign advisor, captures best what people most admire about his approach to governing. Quote, "This is not somebody who is going to paint by the numbers. That's just not who he is. He's not somebody who goes by precedent or who wants to make incremental change." Governor Newsom, we're very fortunate, is a great supporter of the mission of Stanford High. As he said in his first State of the State address just last month, quote, "California needs a comprehensive statewide strategy to uplift and upskill our workers, to ensure that technological advances in AI, blockchain, and big data are creating jobs, not destroying them." Please join me in welcoming Governor Gavin Newsom to the stage.
Thank you all. Well, I don't know why the hell you asked the governor of California to talk about AI when we can't even figure out how to access credit cards at the DMV. And by the way, that's literally true. If any of you have tried to use your credit cards at the DMV, don't bother. We are on the leading and cutting edge on technology of 1973. And therein lies the mystery of this conversation and the practical application of this conversation in Sacramento. I thought the best part of the conversation I heard just a moment ago was talking about the illiteracy of folks in my profession. That's true. It really is true. Talk about issues, blockchain, and immediately people think you're, immediately confused and thinking, crypto, this, that, AI, big data. I mean, I remember a few years back, I think it was with James, and somewhere in Stanford, and I remember hearing Tom Friedman was reflecting on the pace of change and the world no longer flat. He was talking about his book being on the bestseller list in 2005, and he said if you go back in the index under A, B, C, D, F, F, FA, Facebook's not even in the book, he said. Here I was talking about technology, globalization, no longer connected, but hyper-connected. He said Facebook didn't exist. He said Twitter was a sound. The cloud was still in the sky. 4G was a parking space. LinkedIn, a prison. Applications were things you filled out to get into Stanford, and big data was a rap star, and Skype a typo. I mean, you could go on, right? But he was making the point, 10 years later, none of those things existed, and now they're ubiquitous in our lives. It was the nature of change. I love the conversation about what's the world going to look like in 2050. My God. Or even 2030, we don't need hospitals. And I wonder why the hell then are we building them right now? But these are real questions, deep questions. But none are more challenging to answer than this. What does it mean to not the folks here at Stanford? What does it mean to folks outside the walls here? I read PwC, and they come out, and saying, 38% of the jobs are going to be automated in the next 15 years. And then I relax because then Bain comes out and says, no, it's just 25% of the jobs in the next 20 years. And then I read Oxford, and they say, oh, don't worry, that's an old study from 2013. That 47% is only in 702 job categories, not all job categories. And then I go to James, and James says, relax, it's 60% of current jobs are potentially 30% augmented. And I thought, okay. Those are just 4 studies. Jesus. I mean, what do you want me to do as a policymaker with all of that? It's difficult. There's anxiety. There's a lot of fear out there, and it's real. I remember starting to talk about this on the campaign trail, and literally my campaign team said, stop. Don't talk about this robots are coming stuff. People are just anxious. You know, talk about globalization. Be a populist like Bernie and Trump. You know, it's the trade compacts that are displacing your jobs. It's amazing we had that conversation 2 years ago. No one brought up technology, which is fascinating, but also part of the challenge we have translating these conversations to the broader public interest. I remember how excited we all were when we read about that company Otto that Uber purchased, and they drove those 46,000 or so cans of Budweiser, 160 miles in Colorado Springs in a driverless truck. And then I met with the Teamsters. They didn't think it was that exciting. I remember reading the other day, and I don't mean this as a negative, but there's a company, Nightscope, some of you know well, maybe one of you invented it. Forgive me. But one of the folks that worked there said the following about this technology that allows the replacement of security guards, these large robotic units. He said, no pensions, no workers' comp, no complaining. Whoa. Meaning humans complain, how dare they demand workers' comp? Company called Momentum Machines. What gets repeated gets replaced. They're in the hamburger making business. They're going after 3.5, 3.6 million fast food workers. The CEO of that company, with all due respect, it's fascinating. I'm not indicting the company, but it was an interesting comment. He said, our job's not to make employees more efficient. It's to, quote unquote, obviate the need for them. Whoa. I was excited. Finally went to Amazon Go, and didn't have to go up to Seattle. They have one now downtown, my old town, San Francisco. Fascinating. But there are 3.4 million cashiers that don't think it's that fascinating. What the hell do we do with them? Cashiers, retail, F&B, office clerks. These are literally the top job categories in the United States of America. It's not just about trucks, though it is if you are a male in the United States. Driving's the #1 profession. This is anxiety-inducing. I talked a little bit. I mean, this is why I'm here. I love talking about the human side of this. That's why I celebrate what Stanford's doing, AI and that human connection. We talk about empathy, talk about care. We debate about collaboration. By the way, all things we feminize. It's interesting. And we live in a society that doesn't value what we feminize. Empathy, care, and collaboration. It's just interesting. I think about these in gender terms as well. Just interesting that Alexa is a woman, Siri's a woman. Someone said it's like Mad Men in the 1950s. Of course, women are obedient. You ask them and they will do for you. IBM Watson's a man, of course. Business solutions. Who's writing those algorithms? Is that bias unconsciously being extended into AI? These are deep questions. They create anxiety. I was reading about Singapore, and they're so anxious, they got serious about this. They're so worried about the combinatorial nature of technology, the stacking of technology, and what's happening, mobile, local, social, cloud, crowd, all the stuff you talk about every single day. And in terms of the workforce, that they've created the Skills Future initiative where every single citizen in Singapore is given an individual learning account to upgrade their skills. And it's based on their age. The older you are, the deeper your rebate and tax credits go. They've created tripartite agreements with business, government, and labor to address this reality. Transformation maps, not over 3 decades or 5, but 3 to 5 years in each industry and what the workforce needs are going. They're doing that at scale. We added about $10 million of our $204 billion budget to increase skills training at the community colleges. Seems inadequate to this conversation. Even if you're half right. Something big is happening in the plumbing of the world. We're going from something old to something new. And we are not prepared as a society to deal with it. It's certainly not the conversation we're having in Washington, D.C. Tweet by tweet, zig by zag. No one is having this conversation And again, you're not rewarded for having this conversation, trust me. I was out in Imperial County, one of the fastest growing parts, outside of where we are in the Bay Area, one of the fastest growing parts of the state of California. Just interesting, the Inland Empire. Who would have thought? Then it makes perfect sense. That mall that closed down is now a logistics and warehouse operation right out there near the Ontario airport. Fastest growing part of the state, second fastest now, is in trucking, logistics, and warehousing. All jobs on the edge of automation. We celebrated that out there, but then I said, y'all need to be careful. Everyone said, what do you mean? Things are going great. It's an interesting moment. On-demand economy requires on-demand education, but we don't have anything near that. I mean, I'm debating front-loading education, saying it's time for us to focus on ECE, early childhood education, early brain development, 0 to 3, and then I think, wait a second, I got to focus on backloading education, not just pay lip service to lifelong learning, but get serious about it, transform education to meet the needs. I'm not a Luddite, I'm not naive, and I know few of you are. We can't even conceive of the jobs that will be created. 20 years ago, we couldn't conceive of the jobs that are created today. I get that, but there's a dislocation. There's a transition that folks in my business have to mind. And there's an anxiety around this that is real. Let me be more pragmatic, and forgive me for the pragmatism, but I'm in that business. I just met with the longshoremen down in Long Beach. 40% of the goods movement in the United States of America comes through the ports, LA and Long Beach and California. We're moving forward, low carbon green growth goals, which are the envy of the rest of the nation. Our cap and trade program, our goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 40% below 1990 levels by 2030. And that means we're moving forward with new technologies that are more efficient. The problem with the new technologies that are more efficient, you don't need any people. So what do the longshoremen want me to do? Understandably, they want me to shut down all the upgrades at the port. And they want me to write into the budget language, Bill, that they can't make these upgrades because the automation is happening in real time. That's a real issue. These are careers going back generations. You talk to those Teamsters. This is a calling, not just a job, not just a career. My Uncle Joe was a Teamster. Identifies who they are as people. And you could talk, we can talk about, giving them $345 and, call in Sal Khan or someone and say, let's retrain. I don't think they buy it. And I'm not sure I do either. I'm not sure that's enough. Teach you to code at 60 years old or 55. I don't know, maybe. With this human AI partnership, maybe we can amplify those individuals. Forgive the use of that term as well. But it's real, and it's happening in real time, and we're not prepared for it as a state, and certainly not prepared for it as a nation. So it's a long way of expressing this gratitude, deep appreciation for what you are debating and discussing today. And it's also a point of pride for another reason. Because I love to say about the state, the future happens here first. We're America's coming attraction. The world we invented, in so many ways now, is competing against us. And that's why we've got to invest in our lead. And that's what you're doing as well. I read with trepidation what China's already doing, and their commitment, not just passing interest, to dominate in AI. And not the next generation, in the next decade. We better get our act together. I appreciate the president signed an executive order, but there was no additional research money attached to it. There wasn't even an utterance to the next steps and a commitment to translate that executive order into real action. But I hope there will be, if for no other reason, the competitive mindset. So many opportunities for California, but only if we don't take things for granted and make sure we invest in the future. You don't invest in the future, you're not going to do very well there. So for me, if there's a tweetable moment, It's our #1 job is to make everybody smarter. But we can't play small ball anymore, and we can't play in the margins. And with respect, I fear that's what's happening. We have an industrial age mindset in an information age. We have an industrial age system of delivery in an information age. It requires an order of magnitude change in terms of our approach, in terms of our thinking. And so it's a way of engendering this, and my time is limited. We need your guidance, we need your counsel, but we also need your empathy as well. We need to be educated on the world we're living in. We need to be educated on how real this change is, what machine learning is, what deep learning is. Is it the same as AI? This language is new to us. Everyone, again, in blockchain thinks it's Bitcoin. It's more than Bitcoin. You know, bioengineering, biotherapeutics, everything, you know, everything's radically changing. It's not just about Uber and Lyft. It's not just about the Dynamax decision, which, by the way, if you haven't heard of, you're about to. That's the determination whether or not you're a 1099 or a W-2 in the vernacular of those fancy economists in our payroll system, meaning whether you're not an employee or just a part-time worker. And that distinction is everything, because it's not just about workers' comp, that's about health care. That's about retirement security. That's about the new reality, because you all know this, the last decade, 94%, depends on your study, someone else said it's 100%, of all the net new jobs have been created in this country, net new jobs in the last decade, 94+% were alternative jobs, peak contributors, part-time, alternative work, in essence, 1099 work. So you wonder why everyone's frustrated, even though we have a labor shortage. People quite literally working harder than ever, yet feel more anxious about their lives. That's the new reality. And that's the reality folks like me need to address with folks like you. There is an empathy gap, dare I say, in technology. What you're trying to do here is bringing to light that human component in this conversation. The techlash, it's not just in the United States, not just about what happened in the last election. It's real in Sacramento in ways I shudder to even communicate. When I have people that embrace technology talking about data frackers, that's a pejorative. It's not just about privacy. It's not about some version or variant of GDPR. It's about real animus that's being created in this winner-take-all world, and nothing scares the hell out of people more than this conversation in that frame. We ain't seen nothing yet in that winner-take-all mindset, potentially. I'm a business guy. I've got 23 little businesses. I made a mistake of getting in the hospitality business. Boy, did I make a mistake. And I say this with love, admiration, and respect. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm passionate about enlightened capitalism. But one thing I know, businesses cannot thrive in a world that's failing. Businesses cannot thrive in a world that's failing. We are living in the richest and poorest state in America. That's your state, California. This bifurcated hybrid reality of haves and have-nots. A third of our workforce working full-time, earning less than $14 an hour. The conversations we're having here leaves a lot of folks raw. It's about growth and inclusion. It's that second part of the equation that we got to wake up to. It's the thing that literally drives my why. That's about social justice and social cohesion. I'll close with a quote because it really underscores, I think, the moment we're living in. I don't begrudge. I'm not one of those Democrats that begrudges other people's success. I actually admire it and embrace it. I don't want to tear someone down. I'm not a redistribution Democrat, but I am a pre-distribution Democrat. And there's a major distinction in that. But I was reading, and I don't know, someone here will verify this, but it was an old Plutarch quote. I don't know if it's old Plutarch quote, but it's a Plutarch quote. Who was born, I'm at Stanford, you all know exactly when he's born, roughly 50 AD. A couple thousand years ago, generous. And he warned the Athenians, he said, the imbalance between the rich and the poor, the imbalance between the rich and the poor is the oldest and most fatal ailments of all republics. The imbalance between the rich and the poor, the oldest and most fatal ailment. Fast forward today in the world we're living in. Fast forward to 2050. What are the trend lines that define that reality? Unless we begin anew to reconcile that in deeply human terms. Social cohesion, a community. There's no leak on your side of our boat. We truly do rise and fall together. So in that spirit, again, I thank you for your enlightened example. I thank Stanford once again for their leadership. And with hope and expectation, I know that the best is yet to come. Thank you all very, very much.